We got Jacob Harkey here. What's up, man? How you doing? What's going on?
Not much. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, it is great to have you. Let me go ahead and real briefly, guys. I'm going to close the chat. Should I get a plug-in now? No, I'll do that later. Okay, so I'm just going to close this because I get easily distracted. Just want to welcome you, man. First off, it's been a while. You want to tell people just a little bit what you're about, what you like to do, and maybe how we met?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good place to start. So my name is Jacob Harkey. I am a YouTuber. I've got a channel that's just my name, JACOBHARKEY. I'm 25 years old. I live in Los Angeles County, and I am a full-time teacher. I teach elementary school special education. And in addition to that, I like to consider myself an activist. And I originally met you, Eric, when I was protesting against both the Church of Scientology, and then also I was taking part in some protests in front of the restaurant La Poubelle. And I think that was probably where I first met you, was on the street in front of La Poubelle. And I definitely also saw you a handful of times near the Big Blue Scientology buildings in Los Angeles, and also at the Palestine Solidarity encampment at UCLA, which I know that you were able to do some good work in identifying some of the Zionist agitators there. But without getting too into the weeds right off the bat, I mentioned that I consider myself an activist. I have also dabbled a bit in journalism, and I think you and I have even talked a little bit about kind of towing the line between activism and journalism. It's kind of an ongoing question that I continue to wrestle with, of how do I identify myself? Do I feel like I'm approaching things more from an activism standpoint or from a journalism standpoint? And it probably is something that I will continue to wrestle with. But at the end of the day, I do like to stand up for what I believe in and make my convictions known. I'm very left-wing. I'm currently registered with the Green Party, and I was very involved with, well, very involved. I was involved with Jill Stein's campaign as Jill Stein was running for president with the Green Party in the 2024 presidential election. I'm anti-Zionist, so I've been very involved with a lot of the pro-Palestine activism that's been happening in the LA area, including but not limited to presence at the Palestine Solidarity encampment at UCLA, as well as other actions that have taken place in and near the downtown LA area, as well as just the greater Orange County and Inland Empire areas. But I'd say that's a little bit of an intro to who I am and what I'm about and how we know each other.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's been it's probably only been like a year. Yeah, I've got. I was trying to think like where it would start. I do feel like lately I feel like, especially when I was investigating, well, that's not over, but I was investigating the attack on the UCLA encampment. I've often felt, I'm in a uh, my job is especially to stop, not just in journalism. I've worked like as an investigator in the private sector, and I've worked to stop political violence, and I've often felt I'm in a weird spot, like because I do it without I it's about like justice for the victims, right? Like I do it without my own feelings on that issue are long and complicated. And I've just felt weird. Like after that started, I was getting a lot of let's just say angry calls, and people got my number, which has never happened before because I'm pretty careful. And they were calling me, and I'm Jewish, so I was getting angry calls from Jewish people who were like threatening me, and I was like, this is I never thought I would be in this situation, and I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I just want to say, like, I'm disturbed by the climate of anti-Semitism in this country. I'm also disturbed when I witness a violent attack, and I think those people should be held accountable. And I guess you and I can go on about this for a long time. I just never thought that this was a this is not something I ever thought would happen. But then again, you were an activist. I have a lot to say about this, man. I just don't even know where to begin. I've seen some really, like, I was on X the other day, and I'm seeing really ugly anti-Semitism, which is not new in this country. And I'm just like, but the I don't know, man. You're a smart guy. I mean,
Yeah,
where do
and
you
it can
stand
be a
on everything?
difficult it can be a difficult topic to approach for sure. But
Yeah.
I do think that accusations of anti-Semitism are something that has been weaponized lately. And I think that a part of the problem is that a lot of Americans don't really have a solid a solid understanding of what Zionism is or what it means to be Zionist or anti-Zionist. And there have even been resolutions passed by the US Congress in the last 15 months that have explicitly identified anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism. And that's a narrative that I try to push back hard against. And in my experience with the pro-Palestine activism that I've been involved in, I would say that the activists that I have organized in solidarity with have made great efforts to distinguish their criticism, or to clarify that their criticism is with the state of Israel and Zionism and not with Judaism and Jewish people worldwide. So I do think that anti-Semitism is absolutely something that should be condemned wherever legitimate hatred toward Jewish people or bigotry toward Jewish people on the basis of their being Jewish. That is something that needs to be called out, and that is something that's serious. But at the same time, I do think that it's necessary to distinguish between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism and understand that calling out a racist and murderous ideology is not the same as criticizing the Jewish people worldwide. And I know it is that is just kind of scratching the tip or getting the tip of the iceberg, but that's kind of a bit of how I kind of try to approach the whole topic of anti-Zionism versus anti-Semitism when discussing Israel and Palestine, if that kind of makes sense to start us off.
Sure, man. Yeah, it's a complicated issue. I feel that my other thing is like with that word, like I know you. See, I know where your heart is, right? Like I like I know you personally.
Yeah.
I've often like I thought about writing something about this because like I don't know there's something about the way that word is deployed by other people that I often feel there's sort of a venom behind it, and I just like as a journalist, I present facts, right? So it's weird for me to say like just it's about something like if it isn't obvious, like I to say I'm not a fan of Benjamin Netanyahu would be an understatement, and uh, I guess I just there's this thing going on that it just feels like this undercurrent of ugliness that is being weaponized against I don't know Jewish people, and I think the Palestinian people are to say the least deserve their own state, and I just like they're being wronged in every possible way. Like I don't disagree with that, but I don't know, man. I don't know what your background is in terms of your own religion, but there's something ugly out there. That's just what I want to say. I feel it when sometimes when that word is thrown around, not you, but other people.
Sure.
So I just
The
want to put
word
that out there.
anti-Semitism or the word
There's something
Zionism.
about what's behind the word Zionism. I don't I'm talking about when people say it, not when I necessarily read it, but I'm not, I think there's just all I can say is that's something that I've felt personally, and I'm not really a religious person, but
Mm.
I don't know, man.
Well, and I actually don't even consider Zionism to really be a religious philosophy. I consider Zionism to be more a political philosophy that's based on land ownership, based on race. I mean, it kind of goes against what I think a lot of people are traditionally raised to understand as the foundation of the state of Israel. But I mean, would it make sense for me to kind of clarify how I understand Zionism since we're kind of talking about it?
What I'm interested in is kind of like, well, let me, and this is a complicated issue. In fact, I don't think I've actually. One time, someone once again attacked me online. They were like, "You've never brought up this issue on Twitter." I was like, "I don't bring this up on Twitter other than the UCLA work because it's not a forum that lends itself to honest dialogue." Like I have a feeling like you and I are probably on the same page about a lot of stuff. We might differ here and there, which is it's okay. It's what this country was supposed to be about. Social media is not a good place for the most part to discuss complicated geopolitical issues. I had a point there, and now I totally. Oh, what I wanted to say, Jacob, was what I'm interested in is on a human level. What attracts you? What made you interested in? Were you active in other forms of activism, and what draws you to this issue? Like that's what I'm interested in, you personally. Uh,
Well, before October 7th happened, I was already very involved with the Green Party, and I had previously lived up in the Bay Area in Santa Clara County. So I had been involved with the Green Party of Santa Clara County, and also I had done a little bit of newsletter work with the Green Party of California. And the Green Party is generally a left-wing, anti-capitalist political party that criticizes and calls out both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party for corporate greed and serving the interests of the wealthy. So I had already had some involvement with kind of that sort of anti-capitalist, pro-climate, pro-people over profit, peace over profit, planet over profit. Those are kind of some of the key ideas behind the Green Party and what the Green Party stands for. So there's definitely a very strong correlation between people who stand for those kinds of causes and also being against racism, against fascism, against settler colonialism. And I think that a lot of these systems are very much intertwined. And I think that beyond just Palestine, just in the world globally, the United States and the systems of imperialism and capitalism and settler colonialism, they do have a tendency to oppress a lot of the world, to say the least. And I'm trying to go back and forth in my head about how much does it make sense to get into each individual topic here. But to kind of come back to your question of how do I kind of start to approach this topic, I would say that it was a couple of years ago, about 2022, that I came to learn what the Nakba was. And the Nakba associate with May 15th, 1948. And it was while I was doing some volunteering work with the Green Party of California that we realized that that date was coming up. And so we brainstormed kind of about how to approach that and how to potentially include something about the Nakba and commemoration of the Nakba on May 15th. This was 2022. So this would be coming up on 3 years ago now. And I was pretty unfamiliar with that word, and the word means catastrophe in Arabic. But learning about that kind of helped me to understand a little bit more about the history of the foundation of the state of Israel that I hadn't been familiar with prior to a few years ago. But the more that I learned, the more that I came to realize that the foundation of the state of Israel and the continued development of the state of Israel into the state and the role that it plays kind of geopolitically today, it started with a series of massacres and forcing Arab Palestinians to leave their homes or be killed. And in the year 1948, I mean, truthfully, I wouldn't say that the Nakba started or ended in 1948, but generally that year is associated with the assassination of 20,000 Palestinians and the forced relocation of 750,000 Palestinians. And May 15th, 1948 is also officially recognized as the date that the state of Israel was officially founded. And that's viewed as a holiday in the state of Israel. And that was 1948. And since then, in 1967, Israel fully annexed the West Bank and Gaza. And since then, a whole apartheid system, I would say, has been in place where the rights that you have on that land is determined by your race. If you are Jewish and you live in Israel or in the occupied West Bank, you enjoy civilian law. If you are Palestinian and you live in Israel or the occupied West Bank, you are subject to a different court system, a different legal system. You're not allowed to walk or drive on certain roads. I mean, I think that it's a clear indicator and a clear representation of apartheid. We've got different legal systems based on different races, and I think that.
Well, Judaism's not. I don't disagree with you about the. I know, like Ta-Nehisi Coates talked about that in his book. I don't disagree there, but we're not. It's not like we're not a race, right? It's a religion, right? Like,
so that's something that I've kind of been continuing to try to understand, because it seems like the state of Israel will kind of, if people want to come there, regardless of whether or not they are religious, if they are of Jewish descent, if they have Jewish family members, that can lead to them receiving priority rights on that land. And it confuses, it can confuse me sometimes, the way that
I agree.
Sometimes it'll be treated as a race and sometimes be treated as a religion. And DNA tests, I know, are not allowed in Israel. I mean, I feel hesitant to
Complicated.
speak with too much authority about my understanding of, is it a race, is it a religion? And I mean, I think that it's something that I've heard different people offer different interpretations of. But part of the thing that I think is relevant there is that you can convert to Judaism, but you can't convert to be indigenous to a land that you're not from. But that's
Right.
something that can be done if you want to. Well, if you want to
Right.
become an Israeli settler.
Yeah.
I don't know if
No,
that's making sense, if I'm making sense going down that route,
I,
or if that's confusing.
well, I mean, I think one thing we definitely agree on is like, and this is like, there shouldn't be, no one should be oppressed. There shouldn't be preferential, you know, treatment based on class or I think you and I are on the same page about that. I appreciate the dialogue. It's it's
Totally.
like I said, it's a complicated issue. Um, it's very complicated. That's why no one has been able to. There's been that part of the world has been complex for a long time, and no one person has been able to solve it. Uh, um, there's so much going
Well,
on today. I
humans
know.
have been resistant, and they continue to resist. But you're right; it's not something that one person can come in with a solution for easily.
Yeah, and a couple people jumped in, so I'll just say hello to some of you folks. I don't know, Jacob, can you see the chat?
I
Or
can, yeah. I see Scientology Audit Ottawa. I see Marcia, Wayne's World of Science and Technology. Hello, everyone.
yeah, hey everybody. I know it's good to see Jacob. Unapologetically me. Hello. Scientology Audit said hey, hi Eric and Jacob. Uh, a couple things. We launched channel memberships, so now you can become a member of this channel for a low fee of $3 a month. I feel like I'm selling cars. But hey, you got to get the plug-in.
That's right.
So you
You
can
got to do what you got to
support what
do.
we do. And Jacob, what's your channel again, so people know it?
Jacob Harkey. That's JACOBHARKEY. Feel free to come
Yeah,
on down. Haven't
yeah.
been
Check out.
as active lately, but would love to have more people join in on the fun.
Yeah, it's important. I think you're a well-spoken guy. You're a young guy. You're in your early 20s. You you're thinking about journalism, or I don't know if you feel like you want to push the activism more.
I feel like lately I have felt myself identifying more as an activist, if not
Mm,
for any other reason than I feel like I have fewer reservations about calling myself an activist. Because if I call myself a journalist, then I feel like, oh, do I need to make it clear that, okay, I'm biased because I'm getting into my opinions here? And the truth is, I feel like the majority of the time, what I'm engaged in, if I'm not breaking a story, if I'm just commenting on stories that have been broken by other people, then I would say that what I'm engaged in is more activism. The only
yeah.
times that I could probably more accurately say, like, okay, I was breaking a story here, was when I was going to hearings in Scientology civil lawsuits, because there were a few lawsuits filed against the church in Los Angeles that
Mm,
I was paying attention to before I was working full time. Like the Bixler v. Scientology, the lawsuit filed by Danny Masterson's victims against the
mhm,
church and Danny Masterson. Jane Doe v. Religious Technology Center et al., which was another lawsuit filed by former Scientology Sea Org member who left and sued her abuser and the church. So Gavin Potter and David Miscavige, Religious Technology Center, Church of Scientology International. I've also gone to hearings in Leah Remini's lawsuit against the church and Valerie Haney's lawsuit against the church. So anyway, when I go to those hearings and then do videos outside the courthouse talking about what went down in the courtroom, then
mm.
I think there's more of an argument to be made that what I'm doing is journalism, because I'm reporting on something that just happened that hasn't been reported on elsewhere yet. But for the most part, with just standing up for what I believe in and pushing causes that I'm passionate about, I would say that that's probably more accurately activism than journalism.
On that note, I'm curious. So, what made you interested in, what brought Scientology to your attention? Since we're kind of like talking about that, and was it the protests that were going on from where I met you originally, or what brought it to your attention?
So it was actually a little bit before that. It was in, I want to say it was fall of 2020, when we were still on lockdown during the COVID pandemic, that Leah Remini, Scientology in the Aftermath, was put onto Netflix. And so that was a 3-season documentary series made by Leah Remini, the former actress who's left Scientology and now written a book and did 3 seasons of the TV show and is now also suing the church. So I saw every episode of that show, and it quickly became the kind of thing where it was one of my favorite shows. I was watching an episode every night before I went to bed, and it's a documentary. It's not a drama. So I'll do that with any show that I'm watching and think about the next episode and think about what just happened and want to brainstorm about what's going to happen next. But when it's a documentary series about something that's still going on, there was just never enough information for me to get my hands on. So I started, and this was like late 2020, early 2021. I started regularly reading Mike Rinder's blog. I started reading Tony Ortega's website, The Underground Bunker, regularly. And when Danny Masterson's criminal trials happened, because he was actually tried twice, the first trial ended in a mistrial, and then the second trial ended in him being convicted on 2 counts of forcible SA. I was still living in the Bay Area while the trials were going on, but I was following Tony Ortega's daily coverage very closely. And then when he was convicted, that was May of 2023, and I was still living in the Bay at the time. But his sentencing was in September of 2023. And by that time, I had moved back down to Southern California, and I was available to go to the sentencing. So I did. And that was a pretty interesting experience, being in the courtroom and actually hearing the voices of the attorneys and the judge that I'd read so many stories about over the last several months. And after that, I made a video outside the courthouse. And that was my first video that I had posted on YouTube in years, since I was in middle school and posting videos of myself singing. But anyway, it was just a few weeks after that Alexa Nicholas with the organization Eat Predators organized a protest against the Church of Scientology in September of 2023. This was, I think, September 28th of 2023, about 3 weeks or so after Danny Masterson's criminal sentencing. And it was there that I met Alexa, I met her husband, and I also met Laura FM there for the first time. And she actually had a little encounter with Tony Pierce, who ended up being another recurring character in the in the Los Angeles
season 12.
Yep.
Season 25. What did they say on Reddit?
I think that's right. Yeah. But after that, I became good friends with Alexa, and then she organized another protest against Scientology that was the following month in October of 2023, and that was in front of the Celebrity Center. And there, I had become good friends with her in the few weeks between the September and October protests, and she actually let me hold the microphone and interview some people while we were at the second protest at Celebrity Center. So I got to interview Laura and Jeffrey Augustine and Karen De La Carriere and Liz Ferris, and I asked them questions that I knew that they would have interesting answers to, because I had kind of already dug into each of their stories a little bit. And that was a really fun experience. And it was shortly after that that the kind of protest movement, I want to say led, but that was largely spearheaded by William Good, Scientology Audit, and also Jessica Palmadessa. They got really started in front of the test center. I want to say it was within a couple of months of those protests put on by Eat Predators. So I started protesting along with them. The first time that I met Will and Jessica was at the Shrine Auditorium in December of 2023, which was a speech that David Miscavige gave to Scientologists from all over the world who came into Los Angeles to see that event. And the Shrine Auditorium, that's right by USC. And that was the event where Laura saw her dad for the first time in years, and he walked right past and wasn't able to communicate with her, being disconnected. But I thought that was a wild thing to see. That was not something that I anticipated, actually seeing Scientology disconnection in real time right in front of our eyes. But so that's kind of an overview of how I came into the paying attention to Scientology and how I got started with protesting with other folks who have been active with protesting in the LA area.
Absolutely. And for those who, if anybody's, so just on background too, if someone's coming in, I probably should have done this at the beginning. I'm Eric LeVay, I'm an investigative reporter. I guess I could segue into how I discovered these protests, or I wrote about Scientology before. You can't see it, but there's on my wall over here, there's a 2-page letter. Out of all the reporting, the only organization to ever write me a 2-page letter before I published a story was the Church of Scientology, when I broke the story about the government loans they were getting during the pandemic, and we wrote 3 of those stories at Daily Dot. And so it was like about tracing the flow of money into these PPP loans, and it was a lot of fun work and interesting work. Um, cut to, I guess it's a couple years later, where, long story short, actually I remember meeting you because it was in front of the building on Sunset. Because one of the things I remember was I was kind of new to watching live streaming, and I walked up there and it was like 8 people, and they're just filming each other. Like that's still, like everyone's like standing up there as like all the like people like Confident Chris, you were there. I was standing out there trying to even understand what's going. Everyone's just filming each other. I was like, this is weird, man.
Yeah, no,
You know?
the protests that we were doing in front of the Scientology buildings ended up not always looking like what people imagine what they hear when they hear the word protest. It wasn't always necessarily holding signs and doing chants. Sometimes it ended up just being kind of having conversations that may or may not have been related to Scientology. And I could go on, and some days ended up being maybe a little bit less activism focused than others, but there's good memories.
Yeah. No, it was. Look, I in the end, some of it was, as an observer, was quite effective. I mean, that test center on Sunset, I mean, excuse me, on Hollywood Boulevard is rarely open.
Mhm.
Um, and I think there were downsides too. But overall, I think, look, I mean, it made Rolling Stone look, like William talks about, Film the Police LA talks about, you want to get your protest noticed, you want to get your issue noticed. That's one of the biggest problems that, look, it happened. I've lost track of the amount of time this has happened, but even out at the Oscar protest the other day when I was down there, ran into William, and there's just there seems to be a problem with certain activists not wanting. Uh, this is like a side issue, but like you want people to understand what's going on. You want to grow a movement, right? That's the point. And everyone in this country is real paranoid now. They don't want to be photographed, even though every moment of your life you leave your apartment, you're on film. Like and that's a problem. And I guess my point being is, like, for all the downsides of what happened at the Scientology protests, the live streaming allowed millions of people to learn about this issue, right?
Totally, yeah.
Um, I'm a big fan of photography and video. Like let's get it all out there. I
Totally.
don't understand. I don't understand these protests where activists are flipping out about, if it's too dangerous for you to go down there, you feel, and be photographed. My opinion is, Jacob, probably shouldn't go down there. Like that's just the way I feel about it. I'm well aware of the downsides of being photographed, believe me. But anyway,
No, I get all of that. And I mean, thinking back a moment to the whole question of activism versus journalism, I've heard the phrase citizen journalist thrown out there a lot, and sometimes that's kind of what I want to do when I'm at a protest, whether it's anti-Scientology, pro-Palestine, whatever it may be. If I'm there and I'm stating my opinion and I'm stating why I'm here and laying out the facts that have led me to the position that I got and why I'm here, whether you call that activism, whether you call it journalism, whether you call it citizen journalism, it's another way for us to get our ideas out there. And I do understand that the I guess you could say paranoia about not wanting to be doxxed, not wanting to be
yeah.
identified. I go back and forth with it because I do try to take care to protect myself and do what I can to not be just putting myself right in harm's way in a way that's not productive to any cause. But I do understand people's concerns about not wanting to be doxxed. And like we were talking a little bit about anti-Zionism versus anti-Semitism. And the reality is that there are, in the pro-Palestine community worldwide, there are a lot of accounts out there that will take great care to identify anybody who's got a big following who is speaking out for the Palestinian people, to say that this person is an anti-Semite, this person needs to be doxxed, this person's employer needs to be aware. Like, there's an account on Twitter called Stop Anti-Semitism that's regularly finding people who are wearing a keffiyeh or wearing a Palestine flag on their pin while they're or on their lapel while they're at work, and taking care to identify any people like that. So I mean, when you consider things like that, I can understand why people are concerned about having their identities exposed. But I also understand where you're coming from, that if you're that concerned, then maybe think twice about going to a protest. And it can be tough to have a one size fits all solution that's gonna please everybody. But I get where you're coming from for sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, no question. There's shady accounts out there like Canary Mission, who that's their entire goal is to you know disrupt or some Palestine act. No question about it. There's there's the Shirion Collective. There's a bunch of these like real like shady social media accounts. That, by the way, most of the time, with the exception of Canary Mission, most of them are very ineffective, and they're usually often pretending to be something they're not. It turned out that one was some guy in Florida, who was. It's like, so I understand it, but more and more I think of what Marlo Stanfield once said on The Wire. You want it to be one way, like like I see that now. You want, I don't know if you're a fan of The Wire, but you want it to be one way, not you, Jacob, but like you want to both stand up for a cause and not deal with blowback. And I get it, but the entire world's on film now. It's like I was at the Palace. All the days I spent down in the encampment at UCLA, I had some really interesting conversations. But none were with the irony of later investigating that attack was none were with really people in the encampment who would not talk to me because I'm a journalist, and some were pretty nasty. And that's the right. But what happened was the end thing that's going to happen is that not only is a movement likely not going to grow, but the wrong people are going to get the story. Fox News is going to cover it. So that's my unsolicited advice, is for people to really think about that when you choose not to talk. Just remember, or tell your own story, at least write it up yourself. But if you don't do that, a bad actor is going to tell the story. And that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of battle of ideas going on in not just in this issue, but in all kinds of political issues. There's all kinds of battles of ideas going on back and forth between how a narrative is spun. And I do remember that when the encampments were more active back in spring of last year, that a lot of activists were encouraged not to talk to the media. And I think that a big part of the reason is because a lot of mainstream media outlets, but whether they were liberal or conservative, did tend to approach the whole story from the perspective of anti-Semitism on college campuses. And even chancellors from UCLA and a few other universities were grilled in Congress and televised congressional hearings about what they're doing to combat anti-Semitism on campus. Now, if you ask me, obviously you've gotten to get a sense of my bias on how that issue is approached, but I don't think that approaching the Palestine solidarity encampment issues based on what are we doing to combat anti-Semitism on campus, I don't think that that's really the most appropriate way to talk about the issue. But that is just me. And like I said, it's a battle of ideas. It's a lot of different narratives being presented differently, to say the least.
Totally. I'm still working on the UCLA thing, and I've been shocked at because obviously a lot of these people were identified.
Right,
they're identified by me and other people, a lot of other, and I do not understand. I have actually never seen something like this where this was not like a small thing, right? This was a big event that happened on May 1st, April 3rd, and I've never seen this level of lack of account. I'm not saying I'm well aware of the problems in our justice system, but I've actually like almost never seen something like this, which is why it kind of sticks in my head even at night sometimes. I know obviously you spent a lot of time down there. I don't know if you were there that night or not, and you don't have to talk about any of this if you don't want to, but
I'll be a little bit careful, but
no worries. Totally get it. I'm shocked by most prosecutors, when you hand them kind of like people are, William posts the stuff on Twitter. This is so-and-so. That's them throwing a board at someone's head. It's like, what more do we need here?
No, yeah, it was very interesting to see. So the two big nights that I remember paying attention, and some nights I was watching virtually from afar, and some nights I was actually there. But the night of April 30th going into May 1st was the night that the encampment at UCLA was attacked by the Zionist agitators, Eden Own and co. And that it was brutal. I mean, I remember getting home from a class, and I think I got home at like 10 p.m. and I saw that William was live, and I figured, oh, I'll watch this for a few minutes. I ended up watching for a good 3 hours. He was streaming into the late night that night, and we were seeing fireworks being shot into the encampment. We were
Yeah.
seeing Zionist agitators standing outside the perimeter of the encampment and beating up anybody who tried to leave. I mean, it was brutal what we were seeing, and nobody was arrested that night. The cops just stood by and didn't do anything for a long time until eventually coming up much, much later and making no arrests. It was the following night. So this was then May 1st going into May 2nd, once it got to be after midnight, that the police actually declared unlawful assembly and arrested 210 activists. And that was, it was unlike anything that I've seen before in my time, just as an activist, as a protester. And then everything that's come out since then relating to people like you and others being able to identify the attackers, and also just finding out what we found out about Eden Own, if I understood correctly, was planning to join the Israeli Defense Forces a few months after the encampment happened. And I know that there's been a lot of speculation and a lot of reporting about potential ties between the local Los Angeles law enforcement and the Los Angeles City Council, and what kind of corruption might exist between any other pro-Israel advocacy groups or just law enforcement agencies that are in the area. But I mean, there's always more to be uncovered. I think that there's still more parts of that story that are probably yet to come out, and we'll see. But yeah, what a time that was, to say the least.
Look, I'm the one who published the name of the person who launched the fireworks, which is Madan Medizadeh. He launched fireworks that could have probably honestly killed everybody in there because it was a tight space full of a lot of people. It's on my Twitter. I put up the video. He launched it right at the encampment. Those are explosives.
Was he arrested?
Nope. I just checked the other day. He just closed he's like a businessman or something around here. I'm well aware that many things go unpunished in this country, but this is at like another level, because this is it's on video. It's like when I was investigating the Capitol riot. It's like, bro, it's on video. And people still try to deny what happened. So it does remind me of that a little bit.
Well, and I mean, I could go in multiple directions with that probably, but I feel like to a certain extent, that kind of feels like it's just a microcosm of what Israel is able to sometimes get away with on the world scale. Because I mean, we talked about how I perceive kind of differences between anti-Semitism.
Is it Israel or just? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
But it's not Israel, right? It's about the people being. It's about what they did, right? Isn't that what it's about? About holding them accountable. I mean,
you're talking about the attackers at the encampment, or the
I'm talking about just drilling it down to be a little more specific, which is what I do as a
I get that.
It's about that, right?
Yeah. I think where my head was kind of going with that, though, is it feels like it reminds me very much of just what Israel is able to get away with by shielding itself from any criticism, by calling all of its critics anti-Semites. I think that a lot of the same thing can happen at the encampments versus just similar to what's happening just in the world. Whether you're criticizing Israel or criticizing the agitators outside of a Palestine solidarity encampment, anybody who does either of those things can be smeared as an anti-Semite. Not rightfully so, in my opinion, but I just going to what you were saying about a lot of things go unpunished in this country. I would say, well, a lot of things go unpunished in the world. And when you're able to weaponize language such that anybody who criticizes you is a bigot, then that can enable you in a scary way to get away with even more. I don't know if that makes sense, or if that was kind of bouncing around a little bit.
No, I tell you, I'll tell you what I think it's about the lack of justice. This is what I think it's about. I actually don't think it's about. My impression as an observer is really what this is about is there's a real hatred in this country of Palestine protesters, and that's a small difference to what you said, but it's something that I think that's what it's about. It's the same undercurrent that's run through in the '60s, hating, you have long hair, you're a hippie, all that stuff. That's what I see when I saw the hatred towards those protesters in other campuses too. I, there's something about that and about this like radical youth thing that
I
I
think
think
that
has
that
played.
is.
Yeah, no, go ahead,
Yeah,
Jacob.
I was gonna say, I think that that is definitely a part of it, and I think that, like with the hippie and long hair thing, I think that anytime somebody in the U.S. is perceived as showing support or sympathy or being a sympathizer for somebody who is perceived as a US enemy. So, back in the Vietnam War, people who were protesting against the US's involvement in Vietnam, well, they could be smeared as hippies and smeared as being anti American because you're opposing what the US is doing in a different part of the world. And I think that when it comes to Palestine solidarity encampments, pro Palestine activism, a lot of the same thing can be seen. And especially when it comes to Palestine activism, it's very easy for people who are not on our side to smear us as terrorist
Right.
sympathizers and Hamas supporters, however they want to frame us. But I think that it reminds me, to be honest, sometimes of when I think of the way that an organization like Scientology is able to keep its members controlled by smearing anybody who criticizes them as a suppressive
Yeah.
person. Once somebody is a suppressive person or an SP, an enemy of Scientology, then Scientologists aren't allowed to take anything they say seriously or even listen to anything they say. I feel like I see something similar happen sometimes in Western countries with the use of the word terrorist, that once an organization or an individual is labeled by either the US State Department or by mainstream media outlets as a terrorist or a terrorist sympathizer, then the way that they're discussed and the way that they're treated is going to be different. They might not receive the same due process that others would receive. And I mean, we're also seeing that now with Luigi Mangione. Luigi
Mm.
Mangione is the alleged killer of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson. And alleged should be, in theory, appearing in any article that's written about him because he's
Sure.
not convicted. Nothing has been proven. But because he's being charged with terrorism, he's not held to the same standard. And mainstream media doesn't have to include alleged the same way that they would. I mean, I say have to. A lot of the reality is a lot of outlets just don't. And I think that the
Wow.
same something similar can be seen with a lot of Palestine activism is that where a lot of us are smeared as terrorist sympathizers or Hamas supporters or however they choose to
Right.
smear us.
Yeah, that's absurd. I spent a lot of time out in the encampment. Yeah, I never saw on social media the other day. Look, there's always going to be a bad actor in different groups. So there was some what looked like some older guy out there with some uh, sign about Hamas, but I certainly didn't see anything like that in many days I spent down at the encampment, just observing.
And that was somebody protesting pro-Palestine or pro-Israel. What was that about?
There was a pro-Palestine protester about 2 weeks ago who was out at UCLA with I think he had a photo of Sinwar. Or the point I'm trying to make, the big picture is like that's not what I would definitely, yeah, like this pro-Hamas thing is absurd.
I mean, honestly, I would say that most of the protests that I've been to have been pro-resistance. I mean, some of the chants that I've tended to hear very regularly at the pro-Palestine protests in LA are
Mm.
resistance is justified when people are colonized. Resistance is
Mm.
glorious. We will be victorious. I mean, lines like that, I would say, are very in solidarity with those
Mm.
who are resisting the Zionist entity and with, I mean, armed struggle by colonized peoples against their oppressors is something that is protected under international law. And I think that the mindset of a lot of anti-Zionist activists in the West is that it's not for us to say what the correct way to protest or what the correct way for Palestinians to rise up against their oppressors is. So I don't necessarily see people explicitly identifying verbally with Hamas, but I would say that most of the activists that I've stood in solidarity with would not condemn the Palestinian resistance. And when I say the Palestinian resistance, that refers not just to Hamas, but to the axis of resistance more broadly, which also includes Iran and Hezbollah and Ansar Allah or the Houthis in Yemen, and also other Palestinian groups like the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, or the PFLP, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the DFLP, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. I mean, all of these organizations, they might have their own differences in the way and their political views, but they are all in solidarity with each other that Palestinians deserve liberation. Palestinians deserve to be free. So right now, they're all operating in solidarity with one another. And I would say that most of the activists that I have stood in solidarity with, well, uphold those who are resisting. So I don't know. That is more of a radical position in a certain extent, but I don't know. I hope that made some sense. If I can answer clarifying questions if you have any.
No, I mean, look, resistance is one thing, but I mean, my friend was a journalist for a couple of years over there in Gaza, and he told me how much the people there hated Hamas.
Really?
And he says, yes. So yeah, I mean, just so because it came up, like I in the encampments, I haven't seen anyone. Resistance is one thing I haven't seen, contrary to some mainstream media headlines. I haven't seen anyone advocate for Hamas other than that guy the other day. So I think that's an important characterization because, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean that's I think a really like important distinction is resistance versus terrorism. I just want to make sure we're kind of clear on that here.
Well, but I would also say that I do think that a lot of the initial reporting that came out of the immediate aftermath of October 7th was inaccurate. And I mean, I think that there was a very concerted effort by the US government, the Israeli government, and US and Israeli mainstream media to portray the October 7th attack as unprovoked. And you're probably not too surprised to hear, something that I would push back against. I would say that after the decades of oppression that the Palestinian people have faced at the hands of Israel, and especially after all of the peaceful protesting that Palestinians in Gaza attempted in 2018 during the Great March of Return protests, I would say that these people have been killed. 2023 was already the deadliest year for Palestinian children, even before October 7th. So if these people get killed when they peacefully protest, if they have no clean water, if they're not able to leave, well, then an attack against their oppressors is not going to be unprovoked. Now,
I'm sorry. I gotta interrupt.
No,
October 7th, innocent people were murdered. I mean, this is a long conversation, but that, whoever it is, there's a big difference between a government policy and innocent people. And that's what terrorism is. It hurts the wrong people. So I gotta like push back a little there, man. Like if that was your mom, my mom, like, you know what I'm saying? Like this is a big, it's a big, like important issue, I just gotta be clear about that. That's what happens in this. Yeah.
Have you seen any of the reporting that's come out since October 7th about the Hannibal Directive and the use of the Hannibal Directive on that day?
I'm not disagreeing that Israel has deployed. I told you how much I don't like Benjamin Netanyahu. So in fact, it's probably very, very likely that decisions they've made have led to more deaths of Israeli hostages. So, not disagreeing. Just want to make sure that in this complicated issue, I'm making myself known.
Well, and that's fine, and we definitely don't have to agree on everything. But I do think that based on everything that I've seen that's come out since that day, it seems clear to me that there was a concerted effort to lie about mass sexual assault, to lie about the beheading of babies that did not happen. And even Biden himself said that he saw a picture of beheaded babies, that he then had to walk that back a few days later because it wasn't true. But by that point, the mainstream media had already latched onto it, and it was already a story that had been used, in my opinion, to manufacture consent and convince the American public and the Israeli public that a military assault and invasion of the Gaza Strip was justified and was necessary. And seeing that the Hannibal Directive has been employed, and that's even been admitted to by Yoav Gallant, who's the former Israeli defense minister, who's now indicted or wanted at the Hague for war crimes. He's even admitted that the Hannibal Directive was used that day. And that means that's an Israeli policy that permits the assassination of Israeli citizens in the event that they could be taken hostage. Meanwhile, on the question of the word hostage, Palestinians under Israeli law can be detained and put under administrative detention where they are not allowed to access an attorney. They don't need to be told what their charges are. They don't need to be, they can be held without trial. And there are many Palestinians who are being held and have been held for years with no trial, no knowledge of what their charges are, because under Israeli law, that's allowed. So with that in mind, I think that Hamas, in taking hostages for the purposes of being able to enact a prisoner swap, it's understandable and not unprovoked. And I think that it's very clear that the mainstream media and the government had a concerted effort to portray that as mass sexual assault, mass assassinations of innocent. Oh, I might have frozen up for just a sec there.
No worries.
But in
No, I hear
my
you
mind, I just think that considering everything that has come out about lies about mass rape, lies about beheading of babies, and also in lack of honesty about the use of the Hannibal Directive. Personally, on the question of resistance versus terrorism, I don't feel like I'm in a position to be condemning Palestinian resistance factions, but I understand. I know that it's a radical position. I'm not not too naive to that.
Well, look, I mean, I think that I'm going to say this: the mass killing of civilians, which a lot of my life's work is against preventing that, it leads nowhere. No matter who's doing it, it leads nowhere. It just leads to more violence. That's what I would like to put out there in this stream. No matter what started it or the who started this and that, it's just going to lead to more killing. And yeah, I guess that's what I would kind of put out there.
I get that. That's fair.
I'm a strong critic of. I'm just looking at this chat.
No, I get it. It's a lot to keep up with. I get.
No, it's actually been surprisingly. This has been a pretty
tame
for YouTube. Has been a pretty civil chat here. Thank you guys. I think Hamas is. We'll move on to Scientology because there was a big something that happened today that I want to talk about, and then we can talk about anything else. But I just I mean, strong critic of Netanyahu. I also think that Hamas is a terrorist group that's not liked by most Palestinians. How about let's move on to a more fascinating topic, which is the Church of Scientology.
Sure, yeah.
And I appreciate you, dialoguing. I don't know how often you get to talk about your beliefs, but I think people should be open to this.
I appreciate you having me on. It is nice to kind of hash some things out. Yeah, for sure.
You're a smart guy. I think you're an up and comer, as they say, and I don't know if you're still in school or if you're out, but
yeah, just working full time right now, but I could go back. I think about, there's multiple things I think about. I think about going to law school. I think about doing a PhD in political science. We'll see what the future has in store for me.
Yeah, good. Well, yeah. So for those who are coming in, Jacob and I first met when I was covering the anti-Scientology protests, and so I guess today apparently there's been a arrest of a live streamer named DOA, or Defender of Ants. I actually was able to pull the clip, but yeah, Jacob. So I know this just happened, but have you heard anything about this or?
It just happened, and yeah, to be honest, I was kind of scrambling. I almost forgot about the time change, so I was kind of scrambling to get ready for this interview, and then also kind of logging on to YouTube and seeing, oh, a few people are live. Oh, what's going on? Yeah, what I saw is that he's been arrested, and his bail has been set at $325,000. I think, if what I saw was accurate. The truth is, beyond that, I don't know that I'm confident enough to say what the facts are, because I know it is still kind of fresh and breaking news.
Yeah, I could probably let me see. I queued up the clip. I was trying to, is this it? Let me see here. Yeah, let me see if I can just play a little of this. It looks like it's related to, because one of the charges, well, let me see if I can play this. Hang on. Let me get technical here.
Yeah, sure.
It'd be interesting. Thanks for sticking with me on this. So actually, so this is okay. Can you see that? This is the warrant.
I can, yeah.
Okay. So I put this up on X, on Twitter. So the charges, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it looks like it's 245A is assault with a deadly weapon. And then interestingly, the other one, 594.3B, which is, I'm going to stop sharing here. That is disrupting a religious service. You're a smart guy. Actually, I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
I'm really curious because I did not know that was actually a crime. Do you think that should be a specific law? I mean, I'm sorry, not disrupting, vandalizing a religious institution. What do you think about that as opposed to vandalizing anything? Like,
I mean, yeah, I think in general, vandalism. I don't know if I even was aware that there wasn't just one definition across the board. But as far as vandalism of a religious institution was, I don't know if that's referring to just more of a disturbing the peace type charge of loud noise, or if that's actually involving some kind of physical damage that was done. I mean, physical damage, I can understand. Yeah, I see Amy in the chat too says makes it a hate crime, and I'm not sure if that's kind of the angle that Scientology has tried to play or tried to push with the LAPD, that we're being discriminated against because we're a religious organization. Or yeah, I'm hesitant to talk about it a little bit too confidently because I don't know if I know what the specific allegations or specific incident that's being referenced in this charge is. Do you know if you know the specific incident that this is referring to?
great question. I don't, just because we were going live, so I didn't have time to really look into it. But if people
Yeah,
are
I
just
get it.
watching this, the no doubt the religious component is relating here to the Church of Scientology, which is that's how these protests. That's I'm sure where that came from, because it's obvious, right? Like that's where he's been. That's where we all kind of knew each other from. So
Right.
I don't know the assault with a deadly weapon. I don't know. I'm sure other people do.
Yeah, I'll have to
Um,
look into that because I would definitely love to
uh,
know the facts there.
yeah, I had like. Oh, here it is. All right, let me see if I can play some of the actual clip of the. Yeah, here it is.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so go back here. And remember, guys, to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel because we have a lot of stuff planned. And we launched memberships too, so you could support us for the low price of a cup of coffee, $3 a month. And thanks for listening. Um, you know, like Jacob and I talked about, we probably agree on a bunch of things. We may not agree on everything, but see, that's what's being lost in this country is like a dialogue. And when that's lost, there's a direct line between that and what happens with when people start killing each other. There's once that's that civil breakdown, like a conversation with two people like we're having now, that's what a lot of my life is to prevent, is then when it gets into that violent sphere. So I just want to say that too. Let me play this clip of which is from the man. I need a producer.
Somebody
Dude,
backstage.
this is this is like I remember I went on do you watch Status Quo at all? Or
No, I don't.
I think you'd enjoy it, Jake. So they're like Status Quo is an independent they go on the ground and cover a lot of stories that are being missed, like the water in Flint, Michigan. Like I think you'd really like their stuff.
Okay.
Um
Status coup like COUP.
exactly.
Gotcha.
Um
Okay, I'll have to check them
my,
out.
yeah, my friend Tina works there, Tina Desiree Berg, and I occasionally I'll go on and shop it up about we'll talk about whatever. And now I absolutely forgot about why I brought up Status Quo. Oh, I remember they had a great producer when I went on, and they were like working with me backstage. It's
Nice.
cool. All right. So let me share this screen. Present. Here we go. Nope, that's the Academy Awards. All right, this is it. Okay. So this is the arrest of live streamer Defender of Ants. Oh, sorry. That must be the police.
Come on. Come on. Let's not do this, man. They keep swatting me. Look at the side door. Come on. You're swatting me.
So real quick, what he's referring to is a series of swatting incidents that I know Jacob knows this that happened during Scientology protests, but that's not why as it turns out, that's not why the police are here.
Now, a warrant for my arrest? Yeah. Stand over here. We'll explain to you in a second, sir. You gotta be kidding me, man. You can record if you'd like. What's the warrant? What's the warrant? Right there. Right there.
All right, so I don't think we need to play the whole thing, but basically, like that's kind of what happened. They showed up at the we stop sharing. They showed up at the gas station, the AM PM there, and I'm gonna guess that somebody was watching the live stream.
Yeah, no, if we give away our location like that.
Gosh. So yeah, I'll be interested. Maybe I can go to court and check it out. Like I've been covering a different trial, and it's
ZDT.
Yeah. For those coming, I've been covering another trial of. By the way, you can check a lot of this out on my Substack, which is just Eric LeVay. I'm going to put that in the chat. Jacob, I know you plugged your YouTube, but if there's anything else you want to plug, you're welcome to.
Thank you. I mean, the truth is, since I've been working full time over the last 6 months or so, I haven't been as active on any of my socials, but I love to pop on when I can. So, and I'm Jacob Harkey on most social media. So I'm Jacob Harkey on YouTube, on Instagram, and Twitter, it's Jacob A. Harkey. So just JACOBAHARKEY. Yeah, if you want to give me a follow at Instagram or X or YouTube, I would appreciate the community building wherever community can be built.
Very, very important these days. And I put my Substack in there so you guys can subscribe. It's it's free. Information should be free, though we all have bills to pay.
Yes.
As much as I appreciate paying members, I'll never put up a paywall ever.
Nice.
Anything I do, if I
That's the way to do it.
So yeah, I live streamer Scott Hochstetter's been arrested. I don't know what someone in the chat said it involves an incident at La Poubelle. I don't know yet. Because the other charge would seemingly indicate related to disrupting or vandalizing a religious institution, that it would relate to a Scientology building. So
I would think, yeah.
But they're obviously across the street from each other. So, I just don't know.
Well, and I also know that he already had an upcoming court date even before this morning that, if I'm not mistaken, involved a total of 16 misdemeanor charges. So I don't know for sure if the warrant that was out for his arrest today was related to one of those charges or if it was a new charge entirely. I'm not sure about that.
I'm not either. But it's yeah, I've often wondered, because I never really wrote about these protests. I started to once, and I looked back at it later. I'm like a perfectionist. I just didn't like it. So I don't know.
It happens.
I wonder if I was to, yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
like if I was to write something, I wonder what focus it would take, because there's a lot to talk about with these Scientology protests.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been so much in the anti-Scientology community, not just in LA, but also just in the internet more broadly. And I don't know how close you've paid attention to any developments with SPTV, quote unquote, and all of the accounts that have gone back and forth between being associated with SPTV. And I mean, anytime we have a community that is decentralized, where it's not like anybody ever had to apply to come to anti-Scientology protests, if we're all live streaming our location in public, then anybody has the ability to show up and join us. And there can be a beauty to that, in that all different kinds of people with all different kinds of approaches and personalities can all stand in solidarity and come together for a common cause. But on the other side, there's also room for anybody with any sort of disruptive intentions to come in and hinder progress. So it's a double-edged sword for sure. And yeah, as far as if one were to write about the protest movement and what it has amounted to, or what highlights of the movement have been, it's a there's a lot of different directions that one could go in, and yeah, I'm with you. It would be tough to know what would be the right place to focus.
Yeah, and remember to follow Jacob. He's a smart guy, and we've talked about some complex stuff on this show, and I think we did it pretty well. Even though we might not agree on everything, but we like I said, that's something that I think is being lost in this country, and I think social media has made it worse. I'm not trying to sound like Clint Eastwood in the whatever, get off my lawn, but like it's accelerated this kind of like anger. When I cover protests, that's also something I've seen is how this like rage this American rage gets out of control, and by keeping a cool head, I've been able to keep myself most of the time out of trouble just by but when that anger comes in, people lose it, man. A lot of people are commenting on what happened with DOA, so I'll look into it later.
It looks like people might be saying that he tackled the guy that hit and slapped a phone out of a protester's hand. So if what Nana of Two is talking about there, it sounds like she might be referencing something that happened in front of La Poubelle in February of last year that led to the arrests of DOA, Cam, and Danny. And DOA, unlike Cam and Danny, was actually held in jail for several days. So if that's the incident that's being talked about, then if that's the assault with a deadly weapon that's being discussed, then okay, that might fill in some gaps. I'm still a little bit hesitant to say with confidence that I know that that's what's being discussed, but just based on what's being talked about in the chat, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and like we spoke about earlier, he's like everyone else in our system. He's innocent till proven guilty. So he's entitled to his day in court. I think they said that Streets Film and Police LA is on Aaron Smith Levin's show. I actually met Aaron for the first time when I was covering the Anthony D'Amato trial.
Oh, were you both in courtroom for the arrangement? Arraignment, excuse me.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, they keep postponing it, or whatever they call it, a stay. But I had a nice conversation with Aaron. We talked for a while, and it was good to. Okay. I talked to him, I think, very briefly a few years ago when I was writing these Scientology stories on the PPP loans, because I think I reached out to him. I don't remember, but I was trying to understand the structure of how members of the Sea Org get a paycheck. And I was trying to find out, do they get a paycheck? What's the paycheck for? And I was never able to Aaron was very helpful, but I still, there was this layer of, in terms of the stories about the loans, I was never able to get through the layer of, so you can't get these financial documents. That's the problem. Like, I tried to get them from the Small Business Administration. I was denied, which is understandable because they are loan documents. Like, I have there's a privacy thing there. So I wasn't necessarily like expecting that, but yeah, without seeing like financial documents of the Church of Scientology, it's a really hard, not to go off too much, but with those loans, you had to state certain, it was a simple form you had to fill out, but you had to state certain things about your employees, their income, how many employees you were losing. So anyway, that's when I first reached out to Aaron to try to understand the structure of how the Sea Org works, and then I had not met him till literally that other day in court.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've met him a handful of times when he's come out to LA. I actually first met him at the Danny Masterson trial, at the Danny Masterson sentencing in September of 2023. And then following that, I saw him, I want to say, in January and February of 2024, when he and others came out to LA for anti-Scientology protests.
Yeah. Wait, I'm sorry. Who? Aaron. Right.
So, that was Aaron. Yeah.
No, you know what it is, man? The daylight savings thing has like really messed me up, dude. Like,
I get it. My work is gonna feel weird starting and stopping at slightly different time tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't know how the you or the people watching feel, but like that hour just killed me.
I get it.
It's crazy. It's yeah. So yeah, these protests. Getting back to the Scientology thing, have been See, I this is what I was going to come back to.
Mm-hmm.
I am on the same page as like, I was just reading. Nana said I dislike the time change already 6 p.m. in Michigan. Yeah, I'm like I know I sound like I'm complaining too much. We have great weather out here in California, but I'm like slumped over, dude. Like I'm like leaning on the table right now.
Oh,
Too young for this. I'm too young to be fading like this. Oh right.
You were
So
starting to say something about getting back to the Scientology protests, or
yeah, and what I was gonna say was like, Streets and I are on the same page specifically about one thing that it's that. Well, I want to speak for anybody else, like but I feel like I see things linear, like a goal. Like I see what's the goal, and how do I accomplish this goal. And one thing I've been, I guess, surprised about is this. As an observer of the anti-Scientology protests, to me, it seems like the goal is that you're trying to end the Church of Scientology, which is a cult. So there's all this other infighting. I don't understand it maybe it's just the way my brain works. I'm like a logic for lack. I don't understand what that stuff is, because when I see my goal, I just go after the goal. You probably the same way. I don't care about it's not middle school. I don't care what someone is doing with so-and-so. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I mean, like I was kind of saying before, I think with any kind of decentralized community where anybody is free to join, there's always going to be that room for lack of organization and just immaturity. And I think that looking back on the last 15, 16 months, however long it's been since anybody was engaged in the anti-Scientology protesting and live streaming in LA specifically, I think that there may or may not have been many people who participated who were less interested in learning about Scientology and exposing the truth about Scientology, as opposed to being interested in getting a lot of views. I mean, when it comes to the Hollywood Boulevard test center in particular, I think that when that was kind of at its peak, when the protesting in front of the test center on Hollywood Boulevard was kind of at its peak, and there were people in front of that building every night, it got to the point where that was a way to get lots of views, because there's multiple people there who have hundreds of thousands of followers, and just by having proximity to them and being on the same side as them and being featured in their stream, featuring them in your stream, that's a way to blow up your channel. And I mean, I can't even say that I didn't participate in that to an extent. I would like to say that I did not do it with the goal of being selfish and creating clout for myself. But I mean, I can't deny that that was a component of being involved with the community, is that I got an in with other folks who were purporting to stand on the same side as I was. So as far as the infighting is concerned, a part of me just, I try my best to not get involved. And there's certain things that I'm trying to think of how I want to approach this. There's only certain things that are important enough for me to weigh in on. And just one example, I've actually got my Mike Rinder bobblehead sitting here. And I don't know if Mike was somebody who you paid much attention to or were very familiar with, but he was the co-host of Leah Remini's TV show, Scientology and the Aftermath. And he's really somebody who I admired a lot when I was first starting out, getting involved in paying attention to allegations against the Church of Scientology. And he was also a founding member and board member until just a few months before his death of the Aftermath Foundation. And I don't know how much you followed this, but in about November of 2023, around the time that Aaron Smith-Levin was voted off the board of the Aftermath Foundation, that created a bit of a kerfuffle, to say the least, in the anti-Scientology community, where Aaron made some videos explaining why he was voted off the board of the Aftermath Foundation, and some Aftermath Foundation board members sort of released their own story that I would like to say that the members of the Aftermath Foundation board did not dwell on making that their focus for too long, but it was something that a lot of people weighed in on, that a lot of people had very strong opinions about. And a lot of people right around that same time really started to pile on with a lot of what I see as unnecessary hatred toward Mike. And in hindsight, I didn't speak up or didn't defend Mike very much when a lot of that was happening. But in just this past fall, just a few months ago, Mike Rinder, as his cancer became much more advanced, he had lost his hair and he appeared just changed. But he made a series of videos kind of addressing some things that he had been staying quiet about. And I totally understand why he chose to stay quiet about people piling on about him. I think that he didn't want to muddy the waters and focus on the things that he didn't want to be focused on. But once he got to the point where he had exhausted the efficacy of 2 cancer drugs and he realized that the cancer had spread to his brain, his family started engaging in what alternative methods of medicine can we look at, because the traditional medicine that we've been trying its efficacy has run out. So they changed his diet. And the other thing that he decided is, I don't want to be hanging on to any poison anymore. I've been letting people say things about me that are not true, and I want to kind of tell my side of the story. And I admired him for doing that. And so I made a video a few months ago called Love and Support with Mike Rinder. And I guess in a certain extent, that was kind of the first time that I really kind of got involved intentionally with anything that had been viewed as drama in the community. And sure enough, I had people in my comments who were shaming me and saying that this is horrible because Mike was responsible for so many felonies while he was in the church. And look, he was an executive in the Sea Org, directly under L. Ron Hubbard and directly under David Miscavige. He was the head of the Office of Special Affairs. So he was involved in harassing critics of Scientology while he was in. In my opinion, he deserved the second chance, and he really worked hard to make things right. He really worked hard to collaborate with the FBI and with attorneys to turn over all of the evidence of criminal activity that he had, to explain his role in all of the activities that he was involved with. Personally, in light of everything that he participated in while he was a member, I admire all that he did after coming out, and seeing the way that people have continued to pile on to him after his cancer diagnosis and even after his death. I've been very disappointed to see that. And so that's just one example of something that has upset me within the community that I have felt it was necessary to speak out against somewhat. And the reality is that's just one very small piece of all the different fights that have occurred within the anti-Scientology community. So I try not to give too much attention to a lot of it, because if I did, I would just be paying attention to live streams all day, every day. And I wouldn't even be paying attention to Scientology anymore at that point. I'd just be paying attention to infighting. So I don't know if that was so much the answer you were looking for, or if that kind of answered your question, but that's sort of how I tend to think about everything that has been going on.
Absolutely, man. And no, it was sorry, I was just like closing this chat. It was an open-ended question. I mean, like even now I'm just kind of looking at a couple comments and like I guess probably like maybe I wasn't clear, so I'll just say it again. I do not care what people do. I care about a goal and accomplishing a goal. Also, this is, I guess, upsetting news for a lot of people, but many of your heroes in any part of their life were probably pretty flawed. That's kind of like a part of, and that goes with activism too, you know? So like, I don't know, man, like have a life outside of your, I'm not talking to you, Jacob. I'm just like in general, like have a life outside of your work. If you're dependent on, if you've chosen to have a surrogate family, that's one thing, but that's going to come with a price. I mean, choose your target in activism, whatever you're trying to accomplish, and go towards that goal. And then have a life, if you can, if possible, outside that's not related, right? And then you won't feel like you're part of a long-running soap opera. Like that's my feeling watching this. Like I can't speak for them, but I feel like Streets feels like that. And you know, I don't know. But maybe I've been lucky. I've also had more of a stable life than some people have not. It's complicated.
Sure, yeah.
And by the way, criticizing someone as cancer is reprehensible. I mean, if what you're describing to me after someone's died of cancer, like what is wrong with some of these people?
Yeah, it's been really disappointing for me to see the way some people have continued to pile on. Oh yeah,
your heroes are flawed, man. Like you said, he did a lot of bad stuff while he was a high-ranking member, and then he came out and he tried to do right. I mean, what redemption is the story of this country? What more can people ask? I don't understand. Like,
I agree. Yeah, I'm with you there.
Like, I haven't made mistakes. I mean, I wasn't in Scientology, but like, you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah. Man. I mean, we're all continuing to live and learn, and I think that I have seen some people who maybe distanced themselves from him. That I did see Mike say that this person reached back out, or I think that there were some bridges that were able to be rebuilt in the last few months, because I want to say that it was fall of 2024, so just a few months ago, that he released a series of videos that had kind of been his first series of videos in a while, talking about Mike. And then it was January, so like 2 months ago, that he died. And during those last few months of his life, I know that there were some people who he said he had lost contact with that reached back out to him, and that he was able to pick up where he left off with, which I think is beautiful. And I mean, I do like to try to focus on the good and focus on the positive elements of the activism that I've been a part of as best I can. So there is always negativity that can be focused on, but I know that Mike, in the last days of his life, he was surrounded by loved ones. He does still have a lot of people who care a lot about him. And the Aftermath Foundation has actually renamed to the Michael J. Rinder Aftermath Foundation following his death. And so I know that there are still lots of good humans and good people out there doing the good work. And are there also people who are, well, doing other things? Sure, there are, but I do my best to focus on the good.
That's good, man. I feel like that's maybe like we had a interesting conversation here, and maybe that's one thing I think that I would probably like people to take away. You know, yeah, like whatever your activism is, or whatever you're working on, or if you're a journalist, whatever, but focusing on the good in a world that is complex, to say the least. That's what it's all about.
Totally.
In fact, I say we end on that positive note, unless you have anything you'd like to tell people you're working on, or projects, or I don't know.
I mean, I would just say that I encourage people to continue to seek out the truth, and continue to read, continue to watch documentaries, continue to pay attention to a variety of sources to keep yourself informed. And thank you again to you, Eric, for having me on. This was a fun discussion.
I appreciate you coming on and expressing your thoughts. And I think you're a real smart guy. That's why I had the only people who have come on this channel so far. So you, Streets was on. My friend Joey Scott was on when he wrote an article in The Guardian. Like, I'm really like cognizant of who I have on here, because I have my own goals for this channel.
Sure, yeah.
And Sean Beckner Carmichael was on, A Cat with News. So
oh, nice.
No, so Sean is a reporter, and we, people I like and respect come on this channel. Though I do. Anyway, that's the point. Deb, thanks for those nice words.
Thank you, Deb.
Remember to like, comment, subscribe. One more time, Jacob, where can they find you online?
You can find me on YouTube at Jacob Harkey. That's JACOB HARKEY. And I'm also on Twitter, or X, and Instagram at Jacob A. Harkey, JACOB HARKEY. Haven't been as active since I've been working full time, but always looking to get back into it. And I appreciate anybody who wants to come on by and join.
Absolutely. And Bridge reminded me I had Tori on. Thank you for reminding me. Tori Chrisman, one of my favorite. How could I forget that? That was bad. So first of all, we got to have Tori on again. My thoughts are that this show should be once a week, so I've chosen Sunday. So I'm trying to keep to a schedule. Tori wore me out. Tori has more energy. No, did I ever tell that story with so we did the interview. So the first time, actually, so I helped Tori set up like her thing, and I went on her channel. I think this is how it went. So we're on there. It was like a couple hours, and these things like wipe me out. Like I'm like it's a it's a lie. It's just you and I are talking. It's there's a focus involved in keeping people's attention.
Right.
Not you, but the 93 people who are watching. Right. It takes this does take a lot out of me. So we did the interview, and I was like, wow, Tori, that was a lot of fun. We should do this again on my channel. And she goes, great. How about right now? Like I was.
That's great.
I was like, what, dude? I'm about to lie down.
Nice.
And Josh
I can see Tori saying that.
It was, and for those who, if you don't know, Tori Chrisman is one of the most prominent ex-Scientologists, a great woman.
Yeah, she's been fighting the fight for a few decades now. She was on the internet back before SPTV or Going Clear or the Aftermath Foundation or any of that was a thing. She was involved way back when it was just alt religion Scientology, way back in the day. Or
I remember
Xenu.net with Andreas Haldal Lund. Yeah, years ago.
I remembered. So that's actually the first time I heard of Scientology was that website.
Okay.
Xenu.net. I remember stumbling upon it as I think a teenager.
Wow.
And it was like, yeah, it was even before I forgot. I can't believe I forgot about it. Yeah, that was, and it was fascinating. That that website was, it was like kind of old school. And I think they preserved it. He unfortunately, I think, passed away kind of young, but they preserved him. Mm-hmm. All right, guys, I want to thank you for listening. This is Eric LeVay. My guest was Jacob Harkey. We had a fascinating conversation. Please subscribe to the channel, and otherwise, be well and be safe out there. Take care.